unmute. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. That is all good, Lynette. I am, we're waiting for my mother to update because she went to try and get on the Zoom and it wouldn't let her because she didn't have the updated version because she hasn't used it in so long. So
cool.
In the meantime, we're just gonna hang out. I'm good. How about you?
Good, doing good. Hanging in there.
Yeah. Hi, Jane. I'm Anna. I don't think I've seen you here before. You can unmute yourself if you'd like, but I'm glad that you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome.
I made it.
I'm pretty excited. Today is our very first powwow for the Aquarian Way. Jane, I don't know if you're breaking up for just me or is that everybody? Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well, but your speaker was breaking up. Hey, Mom, you made it.
I made it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Love your background.
Thank you. My office. So I was just saying that this is our very first powwow for our group called the Aquarian Way. And the group is through, what's that?
Which I love because I'm an Aquarian.
Love.
Okay.
All right, so I muted everybody just in the beginning. So what we're really doing is we're trying to unlearn old systems and really embracing the individual and allowing our children to learn with the flow of their own intuitions. So this is an open discussion for everyone. We do use the raise hand system so that way we can give everybody our authentic witness. And today we invited my mother. Her name is Linda, and she is from the system itself. She just retired, and she's been working in the public school system since I could remember. So, Mom, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself if you want.
Hello, everyone. This is fun. I'm glad I was able to be invited to this. I've been, as Anna said, I've been in the school system since the 90s. Before that, I was a recreation therapist at a children's hospital, worked on an oncology unit. So I've got a lot of experience working with different types of children. And my major background was special education.
So does anybody have any, open witness or anything that they want to talk about? Go ahead and raise your hand. But if not, I want to ask, what would be probably your favorite part of, like, what was your favorite thing that you did out of all of the different job titles that you have done? Because she's done, there was this one program where like she would just go into the classroom, not being a teacher, and like give the teacher a break and just do fun activities with the kids.
I was a task team teacher. Yes.
Yeah. And then you got to work in your own classroom as special ed with like real small groups and stuff. And you did middle school and all. So what was it that you liked doing with them the best?
I think what the best was kind of like, I went into this one program kind of like, how do I teach this child? I've had a lot of challenging children, probably in the second grade, didn't even know how to write their name, count. So I went into this one program, which I thought was really interesting, is different ways of teaching kids, not the traditional way. For instance, teaching, like using an egg carton to show them what a dozen looks like, and using cotton balls so they have the tactile experience, feeling those things and counting, and then what's a group, and then showing them, but using things that are not traditional in a classroom, like cotton balls, candy. Well, we even used a belt loop, one of the kids' belt loops, and counted the holes in a belt loop, and then divided that, and showing them division and multiplication, just using different things around their world to help incorporate those concepts. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just honestly, in my opinion, I think you had the most fun, but it was also the most stressful, being able to, you know, at the end of your career, when you worked with the what is the name?
Middle school?
No, the special education. You know, when you could really teach them or give them, you know, those objects and teach them in the way that they better can understand things, you know, like when you had the time to spend with the individual more instead of being in that big classroom.
Oh, small group, definitely. Small group. First, less distractions, less stimuli, all of those things. The environment affects the teaching process in both teacher and student in a lot of ways.
You're breaking up a little. I'm going to log on my phone too to see if it's my computer. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. Lynette, go ahead. You have your hand raised.
Hi, Linda. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. I have a couple of questions for you. So I kind of want to know where you reside and where you were teaching last when you retired, and congratulations on that also. And
Thank you.
where were your areas of concern that you were starting to see when you left, in an area that you feel, you know, kind of a pattern of what you were seeing when you left that would be an area of concern?
Class size was a big concern, especially when I went into the middle school. You had classes of 36 kids. Very hard to focus, concentrate. Another thing that I thought was very concerning was the amount of technical devices the kids were on and using nonstop. Cell phone use was very difficult to monitor and take care of. Another thing was the computers that they were using in the schools. These kids knew more about the computers than the teachers. So I would be walking by and all of a sudden I see a split screen and they're playing Mario while they should be doing their math. You know, it was, those things were the biggest concern, especially in middle school.
And where were you teaching? What state?
I was teaching in the state of Maryland. I was at Brunswick Middle School. I also used to teach at Monocacy Elementary School up in Frederick, Maryland, which was near Fort Detrick. But then I ended up living in Virginia, so I just did a lot of commuting. But that's where I had my teaching license personally. That's why I stayed in Maryland.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
On that note, Mom, what's your opinion of the Common Core curriculum?
I don't like it. When they started instituting the Common Core, it limited the teacher as to what they could teach, which is before the Common Core. A teacher had a basic curriculum to go by, but they also had the freedom to embellish. Let me give you a good example is Mr. Nykerk in his way of teaching history. But once the Common Core came in, there were only certain things they could teach through the curriculum, and these are the things that they could do. And also, the Common Core didn't teach kids the basics of our history, our founding fathers, why do we have this law? How are bills even made? How are they created? And so the Common Core just kind of limited the teacher in creativity and interest of the students, I felt.
Yeah, noticing like from when I was in school and then when I put Dax in school, I was like, what is this malarkey that we're doing? And even going through high school, I would think, what is this malarkey?
Give me an example.
The math. Well, the math, I think, is the biggest thing that I think is really, really strange. The way that they do it, it's really different. And they're almost looking for the child to memorize the process instead of being able to come up with just an answer. Like they're trying to, instead of just saying, here's the math equation, solve it, they're asking you to show the procedure. And even for Dax's age, I just find it to be just another dumbing down almost is the way I see it. Because not even including history, of course, I feel like the history they teach in school is not, what is the rest of the stories out there. But I just feel like it's another way that these kids can't just solve, find their favorite way of solving the math problem and come up with the answer. So that's something that I noticed when I put Dax in school was the math, because I didn't understand it. He's in 3rd grade, so it was really basic math.
Well, and also teachers are not, for instance, if I were there, I would ask the student to show me how they figured it out. Show us how you figured it out, because then maybe someone else can learn from what you did. And the basic algorithm that we're teaching is maybe not suit your personality. So,
right.
Okay, great, you got the answer.
And that's what they can't do.
Right.
Like they can't do that anymore.
Right.
It's just so, but I want to bring it back to Mr. Nykerk real quick.
Okay.
Because you said, like the way Mr. Nykerk, and I just wanted to share this story of this teacher that I had, because they don't know who Mr. Nykerk is or the context.
And I used to sub for him. Oh God, it was great. I was a sub teacher too, and I used to sub for him all the time. Anna loved it when I came in as a substitute teacher.
That's the best part of my schooling, was my mom being at school all the time. But no, so Mr. Nykerk, he taught other things than just history, but like the way that he taught was through like activities. You know what I mean? Like we would reenact things and we would build things, and like he was very animated. He was like a storyteller. He almost, he jumped on the desks in class, running around with a flag. And like, so he got that enthusiasm, which is like, I feel like I'm learning that it's like one of the biggest things is if there's no enthusiasm there, then there's nothing, you
Mhm.
know? And I read this book with the subject of, it was this guy who wrote it, who is a, like a nature teacher and a nature guide. And he would get all these different groups of all, you know, different types of kids. And he would go through this learning flow process is what he called it. And it always starts with that enthusiasm. So we had the freedom to have fun and play with what we were learning. So that's Mr.
Mhm.
Nikert. And he was, so I think that really, you know,
Well,
is a good example.
and also it goes on the basis that where do children learn the best? They learn it through play. They learn it through interacting. Yes, you get a lot of information from books, but you've also got to interact, play, role play. That's what Mr. Nikert did. You were role playing, like pick a charge, that kind of stuff. And that's where things become internalized, I feel.
Absolutely. I agree. And from taking Dax home and kind of letting him do his own thing, he has learned far beyond anything that he would ever, because Dax is just one of those kids. My son, he's 9. He's just one of those kids where if you tell him to sit still and do something, he'll just shut right down. Like he will just be like, well, I'll sit right here, but I'm not doing a thing. And he's like Mr. Stubborn. But when you let him,
Excuse me, folks, like
let
his
him
mother.
go.
Like his mother.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So I feel that for him because I was just that way. Like, so he really has learned so much in the past since November. It's been since he's been home. And I got the workbooks and I got the things, and we haven't really had a set schedule, but I'm like much more so I'm making that transition of letting him learn in his own way, really. And my biggest worry to just let him go, really, and explore his own way is that his writing and reading skills would be lacking because he hates it. He's not a very good writer. He just always seemed to hate it. But he's been writing quite a bit, like he's written out grocery lists, he's writing a wolf book, and he has all these new ideas, and he's really being much more creative than I thought he would. So that worry for me is definitely at ease. The more witness I give him, the more at ease I feel with that. Lynette, you have your hand up. Go for it. Mom, will you mute yourself while Lynette gets the talking stick? Thank you.
All right, so that brings me to the question of Linda, how, being that your background is in the public school system, how do you, are you embracing your daughter's decision to home educate, and are you supportive of that environment? And what are your thoughts on a self-directed learning environment?
I think it's a wonderful idea what she's doing with Dax. Knowing Dax, knowing his personality, he's naturally an inquisitive kid, and I think that's part of the public school system is they don't they don't look at individual characteristics, you know, okay, you're a first grader. This is what we're doing in first grade. There's a very little, well, and to be honest for teachers, we don't have the time. I mean, we really don't. I mean, this, okay, you've got to go to an AP meeting. You've got to do this, got to do that. We're very limited as teachers in that system because of many restraints, state, county-wise, whatever. I could spend the whole afternoon on that. But no, I think what Anna is doing with Dax is wonderful because she's Dax's advocate. And as Dax's advocate, she knows the best within the way he will learn. And I think he has shined since he started this. I mean, even emotionally, mood-wise, just talking with him, you know, and when they came out this summer, he seemed like such a much happier boy.
Thank you for that. I like how you put it, his advocate, because that's how I feel. Like, you know, when all this, before the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, he was already having issues, temper-wise and everything. And then when this happened, it was like I was telling him even more to just try to listen. And deep down, I knew that he's never going to, and I can't make him, and I should not be making him. Like, it felt so wrong just saying it. And he has really blossomed back into himself, really, since, you know, like all of his sound effects, he's like a master sound effects guy. If you're not looking at him, you would think there's a movie playing. And he's started doing that a lot more. So, and like he does teach himself so much through his interests. So he really has blossomed. And his anger has, I feel like just the environment of the school, it caused him stress, you know, just the forceful, controlled environment of that place really just didn't sit with him at all. And I think it doesn't sit with a lot of kids, you know. I think that it's just I don't know, it's a place where they want you to get used to just don't think and do what you're told, you know. And then, like you said, Mom, you teachers are so busy following procedure and making sure that the kids get in all of these things and stuff like that. So I feel like the system itself is just so restraining to everybody, you know, because you guys have so much going on aside from just focusing on the student itself. Lynette, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I feel like, you know, there's so many good teachers out there, but they're not even allowed to be good teachers. So therefore, it makes the system is designed to not be supportive of the teacher nor the student. And I think that's what makes it, you know, it just looks so bad on the public school system or even the private school system because no one's allowed to really teach to the child and to really act on what they know is best. You know, I experienced the similar thing with you as you did, Anna, with my son. I mean, he was only in kindergarten, but it was like an immediate, you know, I couldn't deny the major shift in his personality and his disinterest in wanting to learn. And it was such an obvious thing. And it was an immediate change when I brought him home. I mean, you guys have read my story when I pulled him out of school and like we sat in the car and immediately like he broke down and like thanked me for recognizing that he was losing himself. And I think it's a powerful thing. And I think the school system does work for some children, but I think there's a majority that it doesn't work for. And a lot of the times those children that it doesn't work for, they're categorized as having disciplinary issues. And it's just that they don't thrive in that environment. And I'm seeing that a lot, even in our art studio now, is the abundance of children that are coming in with labels of being on the spectrum or disciplinary issues. And these are just normal, what I see as normal kids that are just put in these situations that are far too advanced for their age, and they're expected to sit for long periods of time. And no kid can do that. You know, we can't even do that as adults, sit in a conference for 8 hours and not get up every now and then or want to have a conversation. Or so it's very interesting to see, even in this art space, like what I'm seeing come in, and how the parents are so frustrated with, you know, they're such bad kids and they just can't sit through class. And I'm thinking, no, you know, they're just kids and they're not getting that time to express themselves and have that support. So I don't know, it's just very interesting to see. I see Mark has his hand up, so I'll stop.
Mark, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you didn't have to stop, Lynette. I was enjoying that testimony. I just wanted to chime in on what you and Anna are both saying. And hi, Linda.
Hello.
I just pretty much saying the same thing that you guys are both saying. I mean, so obviously we're trying to alchemize all of these lessons from the brick and mortar system into what we're trying to do here and how to avoid all that stuff. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I haven't even exposed her to the public school. We haven't exposed her to the public school system. Just with the age, she's not quite there yet. We were dragging our feet on nursery school, preschool, and yeah, then the pandemic hit the kindergarten year, where we would be thinking about that. And yeah, I think a lot of this stuff, you know, we already had suspicion. That's why we're looking at doing something else. And some of you guys, Lynette and Anna, you have direct experience with this. And you know, I just remember my own experiences. You're in there in a large class size, so there's no individual attention. You're just in this group of 25, 30 kids, and in most places it seemed to be around the number. And then, you know, any more than that, everybody was saying that was overcrowded. But just, you know, 20 alone, it's, if you're even 20 or below that, it's hard to give individual attention. And I just remember, I mean, the social peer pressure and all that stuff, the buzz phrases. I mean, it's real stuff. You're in there, you're trying to make friends, you're trying to be cool with your friends, you don't want to be outcasted, you know, all these things you can fall into immediately just because of the way you look, or some kind of tick that you have or something like that. And you got to worry about that alone, just fitting in and not wanting your friends to, or whoever, you know, be that kid that gets picked on, or, you know, you have that anxiety just going there. I can remember going to a new school and starting junior high and high school. There's so much anxiety about that, where it's like the last thing on your mind is what are you going to learn? You're here to get something out of this, not just survive it and you know, not get picked on or try to be popular or try to make some friends. I mean, there's just so much overwhelming of that you know doesn't even get talked about. But the curriculums, yeah, you have all these different kids with different levels, you intellectual, you know, basic memorization levels, and kids who are a little slower. And then the teacher has this, you know, even in my time before Common Core, you know, they were given a curriculum, and you had these, you know, structured these 7 classes you were going to take all the day, and it was just kind of a bunch of facts and memorize that. And some kids get left behind. And then you know, the testing system shows who memorized the most, who didn't. And it's just, yeah, and especially now with all the other effects going on, all the different medications kids are on, and you know, the effects that the shots and everything are having on some kids as well. Just all the stimulation now with the phones as well. It's just like, I can't imagine what it would be like to teach in this world and try to, you know, with the phones, and try to keep kids from misbehaving just because they want to show off in front of their friends or something, or be the class clown or something like that. But I just remember in my time, even when, you know, I was lucky enough, I was in some advanced programs, and I can remember being taken out of school, and then that itself causing, oh, well, now I'm being separated from everybody else. And so is everybody else going to think I'm this or that and resent me for doing that. So there was that aspect of it as well. When, you know, kids get, oh, you get this award because you got 100 on your test or something. You have all these different things that affect your psychological level and how other people look at you as well, and maybe resent you or things like that. But yeah, we're trying to move past that and not run into that with whatever we're trying to do here with the dojo homeschool. So I guess, yeah, I just wanted to chime in on everything everybody was saying. And just for you, Linda, I guess, have you noticed that in the testing standards, I've heard this for years now, that they've lowered the standards because so many kids were getting left behind because they just blah, blah, throw all this at you, and whoever retained the most, whoever could survive, passed, and then whoever other kids with whatever problems that they had retaining it or doing well on the test, they too many were getting left behind or held back, or I heard stories years ago about kids not even be able to read or write doing certain one of those skills or something basic math coming out of high school, which I find impossible. How can you pass them if they don't meet a certain standard? Which, I know we don't like those standards and things, but that at one point they did have a measuring stick for, hey, well, okay, you've learned enough, you can go out in the world and be a corporate slave or whatever, you passed the bar. But it just seems like I've heard over the years that no, they're lowering those now. And so what was a 4.0 or a great score on your test, standardized testing, has been lowered. The bar's been lowered so that the government run school system don't look as bad as they actually are. Do you have an experience that? Do you corroborate that opinion, or is that just stuff I've been hearing, a hearsay?
Hello, nice to meet you. It goes by state. Each state, the state's superintendent works with her or his individual experts, and the curriculum is developed by the state. So Texas has a different curriculum than Virginia. It's all by state. I do have to say, I think one of the best curriculums is the Florida state curriculum. I think this Texas state curriculum is very good. In that it encompasses, and the reason why I feel they're good is because their lesson plans, a teacher can go through their curriculum and get lesson plans to pick the kids that they have in their classroom. It's a more diversified curriculum in the Florida state. So it also depends on the curriculum within your state. Does that answer your question?
I guess everything except for your general opinion is the bar been lowered. You said depends state to state, which that makes sense. I was just wondering, just in general, from where you've been, do you think, yeah, they lowered it from maybe when Anna was in school, or if you?
Not really, not with what they're teaching. From the state of Maryland, what I have witnessed in the state of Maryland, I don't feel the standards have been lowered, but that what they're teaching is not as diverse, if that makes sense. And
Thank you guys.
Also, yeah.
Danny, did you still want to speak? I saw you had your hand up there.
Sure. I just wanted to chime in reference to what Mark had said in terms of the education systems as they are really being focused on memorization, and something that I have learned over the years in myself. And it's not like I was bad at memorizing. I was never very bought into the public school system when I was going there. But what I've seen is that when we focus with kids on just fostering and nurturing their instincts, their desire to learn, that you will actually have an increased capacity for memorization in relation to the complexity of thought and in relation to the ability to hold imagery in mind. And so those are not really things that are taught in our current systems as they are. And yeah, it's just a little bit it's just a different way of going about things, but I think it's a natural expression, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that we could root it into some kind of evolutionary history of just like the primate adaptive mind of being able to look through a forest and see the fruit that stands out, or see the predators or the threats. That there's a lot of diversity in a climax forest, and there's a lot of it nurtures a mind that can see through that complexity, or can hold a great complexity of thought. So just to kind of summarize, what I think is helpful for kids is just nurturing that creativity, nurturing that imagination, and not worrying about that memorizing, right? It's like the memorizing comes in relation to the capacity to hold awareness on ideas, something like that. So that's kind of just been more of my experience, that I've seen that develop in myself, that I've never really tried to memorize information. I just take it all in, and then it builds this tree of connectedness, or this tree of understanding, when things click together in that way. And it's kind of like the parable of build your house on rock instead of sand, right? Where like the standard indoctrination systems are all are building on sand, and that there's no foundation. It's just like, take all this information, I don't know, memorize it, store it, versus let's look to principles, let's look to the foundation of things. Let's start somewhere, and then slowly the ideas will integrate, and it's more like building a tree, or just having more of a solid foundation. So something like that. That's all.
Awesome, Danny. Thank you. Does anybody have anything they want to add to that real quick before I go on? So earlier I was talking about having that initial enthusiasm, and that kind of strikes that same chord with what you said, Danny, because what I've noticed just through my experience is that if I, just like you said, if I am like enthused about it, then it's not like I'm trying to memorize anything. It just grows there, and you add to it, and through the experience of looking, and my son could memorize every single Marvel their real name is, and on, and he's got all this information, and it's only because he enjoys it. And even with like that deeper thought process, like you were talking about, I think like when they're allowed to just follow that individual interest, they get into that deeper understanding of things on their own, really, is what I'm finding. Like he asks so many questions, and we have all these conversations, and those are a lot of those things that have been happening would not have happened if his mind was clouded with all of this thinking about memorizing stuff and everything like that. So it's something that I'm definitely witnessing for myself. And I totally get, you know, where you're coming from and what you're saying. I think is it Jane, or I have you as iPhone, dear?
Okay, can you hear me? I'm new to this and I'm not super
Yeah.
techy. Yeah, my name's Amber, and I tried to register and it didn't send the email link, so I'm iPhone for now.
Okay. I'm so glad you're here. I am still
Yeah.
figuring out the email thing. I actually am going to meet with Melanie soon, and we're going to work out that email thing so I can send out the emails. But I'm glad you made it. Go ahead.
I am too. I just wanted to chime in because just to quickly share my background, I have a 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And I've done everything, tried everything you can imagine. I unschooled for years. I homeschooled with support from the public school system. My oldest was in public school, very, very bright kid. Always never had a problem with doing well in school, but it was that's my 8-year-old in the back and our kitty. And it wasn't until he was about 5 or 6 that I discovered Waldorf and started really exploring the Waldorf world, and found our Waldorf school here wasn't really the right fit for us. So I just assumed all Waldorf schools were created equally. And then I went on my own journey of just doing self-study. And I found it to be such a beautiful way of teaching, in that it teaches to the developmental age of the child. And, you know, reading is not taught early on. The way reading's introduced is you read stories, old stories, Grimm's fairy tales or Hans Christian Andersen, and the children take the story in and digest the story and form a picture in their mind, you know, because before they're 7, before the change of teeth, they're all right brain driven. The left brain hasn't even kicked in. And when we start teaching them to write and to memorize letters at an early age, the left brain has to kick in to be able to retain that information. And what happens with that is then you see all sorts of learning disabilities develop in children, like dyslexia or inability to retain information, comprehension issues. And so I went on a journey to go through the teacher training, and actually taught at a school for a year. And I kind of called us the fringers, because we weren't so traditional Waldorf, you know, we really like kind of integrated and brought in what inspired us. And that was really what Steiner, the founder of Waldorf, had said, was that it shouldn't be about the curriculum, but the teacher. And if you're not teaching from your heart, it doesn't matter how amazing the material is, the children will not, it won't go anywhere with them. And so, so what we do, and I homeschool now, what we do is in the early years with my daughter now, who's 8, we read the stories, and then the letters come out of the story in a picture. Like, for example, we're reading the story of the fish in the waves, and the picture I draw on the chalkboard is of a fish in the shape of an F. And so it becomes this connection through story. And then once the changing of the teeth occurs, then they're ready for more, you know, writing and actually like learning the letters and being able to put them on paper. But even then, that's the stage I'm at with my daughter now. And this ties in with the memorization thing that you guys were touching on. We do a ton of memorization, but it's not through reading. It's all through, you know, reciting verses and songs and movement, and everything's done by integrating all 5 senses at once. And so it's really, and I found that I integrate unschooling and Waldorf for my child. You know, I definitely don't stick with a curriculum and follow a curriculum to a T. I think that that's the key, is just bringing in what inspires you. And one more thing to add, I find structure to be really important. I was kind of like, I was an unschooler in the beginning with my son, and I was like, I just want to let him be who he is. And I found he started to really run the show, and that wasn't good, because then we were having conflict, and I'm sure you can relate. And so I found that, you know, structure, healthy structure just means, you know, giving them something that they know is going to happen at the same time every day, or the same day of the week, so that they feel safe. And if they have that safe container, then they can expand from there. But if they don't feel safe, then they're always pushing boundaries and testing limits, and then that's where the challenges arise. And it's never perfect. I mean, it definitely doesn't just, but when the magic happens, as you guys know, it when it feels right, So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And the way that you are teaching reading has really opened my perceptions a lot. So I appreciate that. Lynette, go for it.
Yeah, so I basically do the exact same. I'm a Waldorf, unschooler, hybrid, wild schooling. I mean, I'm all over the place. The same type of teaching that you're doing as well. I was going to go back to my son began speaking very, very young. I mean, his first word is crazy. It was at 4 months. He said, "Mama," directed it towards where I was sitting, and began talking very young, full sentences by the age of 1. Memorization came very, like, he'd memorize anatomy books by the time he was 2, the full body, bones, everything. And not because I pushed it, because he was so structured, it was too much. So I put him in a play-based school because he was so a perfectionist and wanted to learn and take in so much information that he wasn't playing, right? So, I mean, I would rent like a bounce house and my kid would read books in it. He wanted nothing to do with interacting with anyone, no playing, just give me all the knowledge. I just want to learn. So I put him in a play-based preschool, which was absolutely, routine, but no academic learning. And at first it was very difficult for me because I seen him forget his alphabet, forget colors, forget all these things, or what I was labeling as forgetting, all of these things that I thought were important at the time. And all he ever wanted to do was play. So then he no longer wanted to read and do all these things, but he wanted to play. So of course I was getting concerned at the time, thinking, oh great, now, how am I ever going to teach him? How are we going to go back to these things? And for me, then, we moved here, I put him in a school, and I seen a bigger decline to where he just absolutely hated learning. And he had went back to reading and things like that by this time on his own, but he was resisting school big time. So when I brought him back home, it just dawned on me that it wasn't that he was forgetting all of these things, right, that I thought were important, all the academic stuff. It was that he had moved on past that. So he had known that was all old information to him. So he started to, flip letters and just do things that he typically wouldn't have done. But I think for me, I just felt like maybe perhaps it was that it was old, or he learned it too young. He was given so much information so young that he started reversing stuff, or, sorry. So now I see that he's just progressed past the level that I think, that his school was teaching, that he was just not interested. So it's difficult for me because I'm trying to find this balance now of his age level and what I think is information he should be learning, and what he's gravitating towards, because I don't want to have this problem again where it's, where there becomes a learning issue because he's learning beyond his capabilities. Even with his language, because he started speaking so young, he developed where he had articulation issues because he was using huge words, but he was too young to fully form those words in his mouth. So now I'm just concerned with where he's wanting to go academically, what could happen if I allow him to go there when it's too soon for, age appropriate level. I mean, obviously there's things that I'm not going to show him or expose him to because of age, but I'm just curious what everyone thinks about that, if there's any witness on that.
Lynette, I have a question. Is your son, was he right hand dominant or left hand dominant?
Both. Still uses both.
So he's both. Okay, interesting.
And I would have never gotten him diagnosed. Like at a very young age, everyone wanted me to have him tested for genius, to put a label and category on him. And I didn't do that. And I refuse to do that, but I'm just trying to figure out like, where do I go with this? He wants to know so much, but is there a point where it's going to have an adverse effect on his ability to progress? I don't know.
How old is he, Lynette?
He's 6.
He's 6. Has he lost any teeth yet?
Yeah, so he's already gone through the changing of the teeth, and we're kind of, again, in that Waldorf, curriculum. We kind of followed that as well, a little bit, very loosely. I'm still more unschool.
Yeah.
As I'm learning Waldorf, I have all the books. I read and go along with it as I'm learning it. I have friends that are in Waldorf schools in a different state. But yeah, he's lost, he's just gotten his main molars in the back. There's some molars in the back, lost front teeth. So.
And what does he like to do? What does he love?
Oh my gosh. Reading, writing, storytelling, dramatic play, role playing, building, engineering. He just wants to know everything. I mean, he's just like, bring it on, Mom. Like, give me as much science, as much history. Like, he just loves all of it. So he's kind of still all over the place. I mean, he'll spend hours a day drawing and doing Legos and building, and then he's on to role playing, and he's just still kind of just all over the place still.
That's great. What I would do, and it sounds like my oldest, that's how he was. And keep doing what you're doing, just keep structuring your day though. And if he's flipping letters and you see that that's an issue, maybe don't focus so much on the reading part, but telling him stories and then acting it out as a play. If he really likes to,
Yeah.
whatever stories. Yeah.
I definitely
and math skills. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you look, I think it's Waldorf Homeschool Resource. There's a free resource, and you can look up different, or even YouTube, I think has videos, but just doing active math with him right now. If he's flipping letters and you find that he's going backwards in one area, then maybe leave that alone and then work on math right now with him. And so, you can have him, everything with movement is great. So even if you're just clapping and adding, if he shows an interest in that, versus with math or, with numbers are really fun, and he might really enjoy that.
Right.
And always movement, especially at that age, like movement while they're doing anything else is so important, right? Like also crossing the midline, movement where they're crossing the midline so that they're balancing all the senses. It's really, can be really helpful.
And it's kind of what we do. I don't do like sit down work with them, with the kids. I feel like they're too young where I'm not even, my son writes on his own. I still let him misspell words. I don't correct his spelling at this point. I allow him to really just build that love of writing and that kind of thing. I don't do a lot of, it's still structure. I call it routine instead of like, I don't like this, like, we're very structured, it's still like more like this routine of like, maybe Wednesdays we kind of do this a little bit, but I really struggle with that because they're so young. I'm still really into the more unschooling, no real sit down work and routine. I know we'll get there eventually as I see how they progress and how things develop, but because they're so young, I'm still they're still disciplined and they're still, that type of structure, but I'm still pretty loose when it comes to all the other stuff as far as the unschooling approach just seems to work for us right now.
If I
Lynette,
could just, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ann.
no, go for it, Mark. Oh, well,
Um,
real quick,
Yeah, sure.
I want to ask real quick, Mom, do you know how to raise your hand? What? I can't hear you. I don't know if it's me
Still
or
muted.
not.
He's still muted.
Oh,
No.
all right. Well,
No. Oh, my network is low. Can you hear me?
yes. Do you
Can
know
you
how to
hear me?
raise your hand?
No.
Yeah.
I told you. Okay.
Oh, all right. So on the bottom of your screen, there should be a reactions button. And if you click on the reactions button, there should be a little hand and it says
there.
raise
Okay.
hand.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Thank
Mark,
you.
go ahead now. Sorry.
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if I have much in experience with my daughter to give witness to you, Lynette. I'm hoping to learn from you guys more. Just trying to get her excited about learning about something, just ways to push her from her toys and her desire to watch TV and everything dinosaur. Trying to, I'm working on my motivation. It sounds like everything you and Anna and Amber are doing is just awesome. I'd say with your son, I don't know what I could tell you that you're doing to improve. It sounds like you're doing everything just incredible, and I just really want to take all this to heart and absorb it and incorporate it for my daughter. Just the only thing I would say is it does sound like you have what would be classified as a genius in the traditional sense. I don't like that word either. And just going back to my own experience, which is pretty much all I have. Just I was kind of given that special elevated sense growing up. And like I said, taken out of classes, it does have an effect on your mind when you're taken away from the rest of the kids and built up and told how great you are constantly by your parents and teachers and other people. And I would just, I did, like I've said before in dojo, I'd never really liked that. I don't like being put on a pedestal. Sometimes you just can't help it when you're excelling at certain things. People are going to do that regardless, but I would just say, don't as best as you can, don't elevate him and make him believe he's all that great, kind of try to keep him humble to a certain extent, because I know it had effects on me. And I know when I got in, there's a certain point where he's going to want to start to play with friends more and get interested in girls down the way. And that can screw everything up and can put you in the opposite direction. I know to a certain extent that's good, but I know definitely having, we talk about ego being good, but at a certain point, I know my focus on my studies, you get to a point where you're thinking that you're all that, and then you maybe let off the gas a little bit and just you're interested in other things, and just kind of, well, I've accomplished so much already, and then you think you can ease up a little bit and not but it sounds like he's very self-motivated, which is really good. I just, he's at these young ages and things are going to change, puberty and all that stuff. And I don't know the exact answer to prevent things from happening, from like kind of the rebellious turn that I took and started doing things very detrimental to my academics and the level that I could have achieved, the things I could have done. I'm not being a victim or anything, but I just think that there was something always that didn't strike me right about my mom and the way my family treated me. Because you do need to remain a certain amount of humility, and you're going to go into college, and all of a sudden you're not as hot as you think you are, and the same thing in the work environment as well. So, but it sounds like you're doing everything great for right now. I just don't let his ego get too big would be my only witness for you. I don't know if I said.
It's interesting you said that, Mark, because I found what I was doing early on is I was downplaying him a lot, right? So I was doing the opposite, where I was like, I didn't want to build him up. So therefore, when he would shine really bright, I would like downplay it to people, right? In front of him, which was a horrible thing to do. But it was like, I felt this like shame that my kid was someplace, right, on a certain level, but all his peers around me, their kids were at a different level, and they would build him up. So then I felt the need to like bring him back down in those group settings. So I'm still like trying to figure that out in our life too, like now with his peers, because as it is now, he's 6, but he's playing with like 12-year-olds. So like when 12, 13-year-olds come in our studio, you know, another big reason why I started this studio is there's no homeschoolers. So I started this art studio so he had social interaction with a mixed age group. But I'm finding he's gravitating and connecting more with these like 13-year-old kids. And I'm still trying to like keep him down. And I'm like still trying to find this like balance of like build him up, but keep him down. And it's like, it's just so difficult. So I appreciate you saying that. And that definitely helps me know that I still got to just, this is maybe just my life of just doing this rhythm of that. So thank you.
Mom, go ahead.
Has anyone heard of, you know, as I'm listening to all of this, has anyone heard of the Orton Gillingham reading program? No. Okay. The Orton Gillingham reading program is a complete hands-on reading program where you use their regular toys, you use Play-Doh, you use manipulatives, showing the letters, how they sound, have them look at their face and how they form the letters with their lips. It's such a hands-on program that it almost makes reading become a natural part of their environment. Like, you know, how fast you say a word and the syllables, you use one of their little toy cars and you're going, you know, like, always, you've made it, always. They've made it to that goalpost, but they used a little car to say that word and use that motion with their hands, with their lips. I felt that it was a very good, it's hard. It's a hard program to do with a class. You have to do it with a very small group of kids. But it's a very successful reading program in that, because it uses all of the senses, hearing, listening, and they use rhymes, like the old time rhymes that we used to listen to as kids. I mean, I'm sure we've got a generation of kids that don't even hear, like, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jumped over the candlestick, you know, things like that. And when you know those rhymes and you get that feel of rhyming in that, it uses those Play-Doh, tinfoil. It just uses things of our natural that we have in our kitchen that we can use to teach kids to read. So if you have a chance, I would suggest looking into the Orton Gillingham reading program also.
Thank you. That actually sounds a lot like the Waldorf and what you were doing, Amber. These are all brand new things that I'm, you know, because I taught Dax just his letters and the basics and stuff before I sent him to school. And him and I and his reading have been evolving. And I just want to say real quick, Lynette, I feel like if Dax, my son, will just engross himself in something, and that's all he will do. That's all he will want to do. But he changes with the wind. And like all of a sudden it'd be like, meh, he doesn't give a crap about that. And he's on to the next. So I feel like your worries are like your son is not worried. You know what I mean? Like if he really likes hanging out with the older kids, I think that might be, you know, okay, just to let him gravitate towards where he wants to go and what he wants to spend his time on. And I've had a hard time trying to do this as well, because I like that routine and the schedule and everything. So that's just what my witness is for you and what I've noticed in Dax as well. Amber, go ahead. You're next. Sorry.
Oh, I just, you know, Lynette, what she was saying, just totally, I can completely relate and understand. And, oh, well, I don't want to see anything as a mistake, but with my oldest, I was a single parent, and my instinct was to just, you know, let him engross himself in the things he loved. And he also just such a bright kid and just such a sponge. And I had, you know, his dad saying I needed to discipline him more, and other males that were in my life saying that I was too loose with him, needed to discipline him more, and needed to be harder on him because he had so much energy. His head was spinning off of his body, it seemed, you know. And so for a very long time, I didn't realize this actually till this year, you guys, and he's 15. I was rejecting him. So kind of like what Lynette was saying, where, you know, he's playing with friends and he's doing things that are more advanced. And so you want to downplay them. And I did the same thing. I kind of wanted to downplay it because he was attracting negative attention, you know, negative energy for that. And so, you know, without getting into too long of a story, he's now 15. He earned a 4-year scholarship to a private school here for academics, you know, and we were super excited for him because I felt like he was finally going to be challenged. And with COVID and everything, he was struggling for all the protocols, everything required of the schools. It's like a prison camp. And so we pulled him out, and he was home. He's been home doing distance learning. He's still doing it through the school, but he's been home. And my husband now, you know, he comes from the old school way of doing things where, you know, like you really need to be firm with discipline and consequence. And, you know, my son was last year really railing hard against me. I felt like I was losing my son. We weren't connecting. We weren't hugging. I would try to go in there and at night and connect, and we would. That was like the only time of day where he would kind of open up to me. But there was just this, like, he was wanting to model more of what his dad was doing, which was gaming and sit, you know, being in front of a computer all day. And so all of a sudden something switched in me, probably, I would say like 3 months ago, you guys, like this is very recent, that I was constantly rejecting him. He would say something to me, for example, he'd be like, Mom, I want to go to this party with these friends. And I would be like, no, I don't want you to go. There's drinking there or whatever. And instead of doing that, I started just hearing him. And what I realized was I would say to him, okay, that makes me uncomfortable. And I think you could do this with any age, you know, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not sure about that. Why? Tell me why that feels like a good idea to you. Tell me why you want to do that. And so he tells me, and pretty soon I started realizing he was giving me really good reasons and showing me he was responsible. And it was my issue that I was projecting on him. Like, he was fine. He was okay going to that party. He was going to use good sense. He already had a plan to call me if he needed to be picked up in the middle of the night or whatever it was. But by listening to him and allowing him to be heard, and then trusting him to trust himself. Oh my God, I have a different kid now. So literally in the last 3 months, he's like, and he's still home on distance learning. He comes out of his room and he hugs me, and he's like taking breaks from the computer more, and he's happier. And it's just because I'm not, and I completely stopped like giving consequences. Like, I'm going to take your screen time away because you didn't do your chores or whatever it was. I completely stopped that. I went the extreme other way, and I just started not having rules. And then what's happened recently is I asked him, hey, can you go pull the palm fronds off of the drive? And he's like, no problem, Mom. I mean, I have a completely different kid, you guys, just by hearing him and not rejecting what he says. And so that's really helped me a lot. And I wish I had done it when he was a lot younger, but you know, we live and learn.
That's awesome. I always try to, Dax and I would call it making a deal. Like, all right, we'll make a deal. Like, if we have a disagreement or something, because it's just him and I, in the house. So it's a team effort, just me and him. And let's say bedtime. Okay. If he knows that like he doesn't have to wake up in the morning, dad's coming to get him, he will try to explain to me why it is a good idea for him to be able to stay up. And I mean, I'm trying to hear him out, and we make a deal. I'll be like, all right, I'll make a deal with you. You can go to bed this time, but you have to turn it off at this time. And I search on his history, and he actually listens while I'm sleeping. So it's been powerful letting myself trust him. Danny, thank you for waiting.
No worries. Yeah, I'll just chime in with that and say, you know, I had a rocky relationship with my mother in high school, and it was kind of, I think maybe like sophomore year that she changed her strategy as well, and basically just gave me a lot more responsibility. And it was kind of like I was so happy to have that extra freedom that I wanted to give back to her in that way as well, something like that. So wanted to share that. Then also, when we're talking about notion of putting them on a pedestal or kind of cutting them down, or just with that kind of stuff, my thinking is, I feel like it's always okay to appreciate and acknowledge and support the process. So it's not like you're saying, oh, you're so good, you're so good at this, you're whatever, you're awesome. It's more like, wow, I'm so impressed with how much you practice, or basically that you're acknowledging the process, that you're saying you do so well at learning and getting better. And it's not like you're saying you are so good. It's like you're saying you are, I'm not saying it very well, but it kind of, there's a book called Bounce. And I know that this kind of topic is out there in different books in different places, but Bounce is a book that was written by a table tennis player. And it basically just goes through how any expert, anyone that's really good at something has put a lot of hours into that, and that there is a sort of consistent amount of dedication and practice that is necessary to get good at anything. So all that being said, just the point being is that, we want to encourage them to practice and to understand that it's not just like some people are naturally good at this or naturally good at that, which there might be some of that. There's obviously some genetic variability, but for the most part, the differences we see in people and these experts is just because of the hours of dedication. So bringing it all back is just to say, I think we can always support kids in that process and always, uplift them and, wow, you are doing such a great job at learning or practicing or something like that. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's all.
Thank you. Sorry guys, I had to step off the camera just for a moment. Mom, did you have your hand up again, or did you have it up from last time? Mom, you're still muted.
Yeah, no, I just kept it up because as I'm listening to you guys, being a mother of three, I had a stepdaughter, have a stepdaughter. Sometimes as parents, we tend to overthink things, and we're with our children all the time. And so we're kind of zeroed in on certain things. So sometimes you got to step back and just not overthink it and let the flow just flow. We tend to get all wrapped up. Oh, this is my kid. Am I doing the right thing? Should I do this, do that? And it just kind of go with the flow. And you're going to have your downs and your ups and ebbs and flows, but it's amazing. It's after they turn out to be great kids, great adults, you know, so just take it easy. There you go.
I'll jump in. So I wanted to say with Danny, with what you were saying, you know, that's a lot how I practice as well. Like with my kids and even the students again that come in the art studio, I often say, I like the way you did this. You know, just that little acknowledgement, like I like the way you did that. Or tell me, instead of like me, even like when I look at their art, instead of saying, oh, that's a great cat or whatever it is, I give it to them where I'm like, tell me about your piece. You know, I often throw it back at them. So it's a little bit of praise of like, I like the way you came up with this and how you did this, but I agree in how you were talking about that. I think that was it. I know I had another point, but I forgot. So anyways, great stuff, you guys.
I think it's a great topic. My mom and I had our own quarrels, of course, at that same age. Amber, that your son is at 13. I think it's so great that the subject comes up when you're here with me, Mom. So we really were completely out of balance with each other and constantly fighting with each other for until what, I was like 16. And even then, so like we really both went through a period of finding our own balance. You know, I hated her for my own reasons. I don't even remember why, you know, but now we're like absolutely best friends, you know, and we talk two in the morning forever. And I was reading because I was looking into those cycles, Lynette, that you posted on Dojo Earth, how, and you know, being a parent, like you said, Mom, I think it really is just, I mean, it's a constant learning experience and you just going with the flow. But, oh, Lynette, you posted about the 3, 6, 9, 12, and all those. And I was reading where boys, when they first start puberty, they go through a period of rejecting their mother. Because in subconscious, subterranean level, they start being attracted to women in a sexual sense. So they subconsciously still want that nurturing mother, but they are, you know, the neocortex is trying to tell them to become their own man, you know? This is what I was just reading from what you had offered, Lynette, on the site. And I thought that was something interesting to add to this. And it's also something I've, you know, I noticed in my brother as well. Like, you know, when they hit that age, it's like they just go into hibernation and you don't know what's going on. So that was just something interesting that I wanted to add to that, because that was really what popped into mind. And I think that was something from the Waldorf that you posted. Go ahead, Lynette.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's in the Waldorf teachings. So that was something, yeah, that I shared in that regard. And that has me thinking too, you know, if you go back in history and you look at, I mean, this is not in the same vein of like rejecting your mother and that kind of thing, but you know, men back in time at 13, the things that we were achieving, right? I mean, these were like our men. So I think there's still that subterranean thing at 13 where they're ready to venture out into the world, right? And it's like, well, you're holding me back from what I need to do. So I think that's a very interesting thought and interesting perspective. Steinhardt really has some great stuff when it comes to the Waldorf education and things. It's good stuff.
Yeah, here recently, that that article, and the more that I looked into that, it really did benefit a lot because my son is going through those shifts. And I was just telling my mom, we were on the phone earlier, that he's Mr. Independent lately. And, you know, he wants to ride his bike around town. He doesn't want me coming with him. And he just wants to go and do. And like when we're on a walk, I'm like trying to direct where we're going. And he's like, no, you know, he wants to go where he wants to go. And he wants to decide his bedtime. That's like a big one here lately. And he's just like becoming into being that little man. And you're like in the, you know, a long, long time ago, at the age of 13 is when you're supposed to go out and go be a man. And like you said, I think there's that primal subterranean urge to do that. And even right now, you know, I'm noticing that he does, and he feels confident. Like he feels confident in himself to go do it. So I have let him, he's got his phone, and I'm teaching him how to ride his bike with the dog on the leash at the same time, because I want the dog to go too, like go protect him. So I'm kind of going through that process of trusting him to go out there and do that. Even like today, he was like, hey mom, just let you know, I'm walking up the street to dad's. I was like, okay, well, I'm glad you told me. And mom, I wanted to ask, so I wrote down the Waldorf Institute, and I wanted to take note of the reading program that you were talking about.
What do you want to know?
I think what it's called. I think you're both muted.
Yeah, thank you. I was muted and so was she. So I just wanted to know what it was called because I don't remember. The hands-on reading program. I want to write it down just to take note of it. And you gotta unmute, mom.
I did.
Both of us, you guys.
Okay.
There you
Can you
go.
hear me now? Okay. Orton, Gillingham.
Spell it for me.
Oh gosh, now you gotta have me write it down. O-R-T Gillingham, Gillingham.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right.
I just want to mention the term free range parenting. There's some very nice positives to free range parenting. We lived next to the Potomac River, and I let my kids go down to the Potomac River all by themselves, play around near the river. Of course, we had 2 dogs that were with them to protect them, but learning experiences without us around helps the kids also. I mean, like learning, like when I found my son sitting on the island in the Potomac River, jumping off the island, trying to catch the current to go around the river, you know, you would freak out, but you know, they were safe, they were fine, the dogs were taking care of them. So there's something to be said about free range parenting, I think, because it also adds to that learning experience for those kids. I just wanted to mention that.
Yes, I 100% agree. I think, you know, I would call myself a free range kid, but we still had, you know, it was still like we ate dinner as a family and stuff. But other than that, go play, go do something. And we definitely learned. So, you know, that is something I notice in like having my son's friends over a lot more now that I'm homeschooling, and I want him to get that play interaction. He has so much more like life skills, I guess I would call it, or like common sense or street smarts. And like I feel like I don't want to really say it because it's kind of a harsh, hurtful thing, but like these kids need their hand held to know where to get like the water from the faucet, or it just, you know, so there's so much value to be learned just from, you know, getting hurt out in the woods and having to run to get your parents to help you or anything like that. You know, I think there's so much to be learned in that experience. I think, you know, it is unfortunate though that not a lot of my son's friends are able to do that. Like other parents think I'm crazy for letting him just go, you know? And it's like he's 3 blocks away from my house, and I could call my friend who works at the store, which he's riding right there at the park, and she could, like, we live in the smallest community. And so that's the biggest struggle for me right now, is letting him go be himself, but also finding other kids that he can go do that with too, you know? Lynette, go ahead. I think, yeah, you're next.
I want to recommend a couple books on this topic. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Richard Loeb. So he's done 2 books on this topic. One of them is called Last Child in the Woods, and the other is Our Wild Calling. I mean, there's several books on this topic too. The Call of the Wild and Free is a really great book also. But on that topic of free range and letting them go, I'm also finding that a problem. You know, mine's 6. We live on a huge acreage, so I let mine go out. And when kids come here, I let them do that. But I think it's interesting that we're having this problem with kids turning inward with technology, right? To where they only want to be on their devices and all these things, and they're not going out. And I kind of feel like it's because we've created that, right? Like we haven't let them go out and explore because of our own, not us personally, but society, us as a whole isn't allowing them to venture out and explore. So therefore they're turning inward and on their devices and gaming and everything like that. So we're almost like creating this dependence on us, right? And this unfeeling of being safe. And I just want to say, Amanda, Anna, I think it's great that you're, you know, not very many people are thinking like you and letting them go and do that. And it's so important because it's a confidence builder and it's preparing them for the real world. You know, we're not always going to be there to hold their hand and guide them through situations, and they need to get hurt, like you said, to grow. And as awful as it is, even for me as a parent, to see that, to know like, oh, what he's doing is dangerous and this is not going to end well. I often it's terrible. I turn away and I let him do it. I mean, I let him get hurt. If it's not something major, like I allow him. And our big thing in our house is, do you feel safe? And if he says, yes, he feels safe, then it's a go ahead then, you know, and then therefore it's a kind of a consequence. If something does go bad, he'll think again, like, oh, that didn't work out, as opposed to me just saying, no, get down, don't do that, you're going to get hurt. That's me basically pushing onto him. I don't trust your body. And, you know, it's more, I try to feel like I put it in his court because he knows better than I do what he's comfortable with. So I just think it's really cool that we're on this topic.
Yeah, I definitely think that boys aren't having fun until they get hurt. I swear, I don't know what it is. But just the other day, Dex and I were down at the creek and it's still got frozen spots in it. We're here in Maine and the water is just like rushing. It's only like 2 feet of water. And he's like inching his feet out on the ice, inching his feet. And I'm like, you might fall. And he's like, no. I'm like, all right. And then next thing you know, right in the water. But we were close enough that he could just run in the house, you know? So I definitely get that. It's like, you gotta let them get hurt to learn. They got to learn their own world. Mark, I believe you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this topic, this is great. I really enjoy hearing all this from you guys. Just for my own knowledge, it's almost dojo parenting instead of homeschooling, but I think it's totally appropriate. So I'm fine if it's a dojo homeschooling / parenting. I need this. Definitely had issues with being a helicopter dad for the years, and not letting my daughter, not wanting her to get hurt too much. But yeah, we're in that phase now where she's ready to break off on her own. I know it's totally different for girls and boys, but all I have is experience being a boy. So I'm definitely letting her go out and do her own thing more. We were out hiking on our vacation just yesterday, and then she just like, I was just like, she doesn't want to. We're climbing over these boulders on this river, waterfall, and she was just like, oh, I can't do it, and I'm trying to just get her to try, or else we're gonna go home or something. I usually do have to still doing the consequences things. If you don't, if you're not going to try to do this, then we'll just leave, because you don't, I'm not going to carry you and lift you over the rocks. It's taking away from the experience of it. So yeah, we're working on that as well. Just I'm at the point now to get away for the tablet and the TV is not an option for her, taking her out. Past 2 weeks, the weather's so great. I must have spent 20 hours at the parks with her, just sitting there watching her play. And that's been great, just because she's becoming more social for not having her ever in any school or daycare. Now she's just going up to the park to every kid of all ages with their families, and telling her name and socializing and wanting to just play with them all, which is huge from my perspective, just because I was worried about her socializing without being in any kind of school or daycare. And just the only thing I also want to touch on was just that, yeah, it is scary letting your kids go off on their own. It's like, I'm finally getting comfortable where if I can't, we had this big park / school where the playground is, she's all over, running all over that place. And sometimes I can't see her. And before, I'd just like freak out if I couldn't have eyes on her. And so now I'm getting more comfortable with that. And just, she met this girl. They hung out like 3 days in a row before we left. They were at the park at the same time. And she started saying some weird things when she came back. And like, she didn't like the color of her hair all of a sudden. I'm like, well, where'd you get this from? And so I'm just like, that is something that is definitely on my mind too, because you start hanging out, get the independence and hanging out with friends, kids you don't know. And they, you never can underestimate the susceptibility of your kid to fall in line or just fall susceptible to what other kids are thinking. I know I was a really good kid up until a certain point, and then I started hanging out with this kid. He was kind of an Eddie Haskell, nice to all the parents, and then saw the things he was doing, and he kind of turned me a little to the dark side a little bit. And so definitely, my mom, again, to the pedestal, she thinks she got nothing to worry about with her smart kid, and then all of a sudden I'm doing some pretty messed up things throughout my adolescence and teenage years. So it's just kind of always something in the back of my head. You never know who your kid's hanging out with or what influences they're getting. I don't know. Just thought I'd share that up since we're sharing parenting tips today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's a really great, I love the subject. Amber, go for it.
Yeah, I really love hearing everything you guys are sharing. And I just keep going back to, like, when we trust them, it gives them permission to trust themselves. And they have to learn how to trust themselves, because if we're fearful and we're hovering all the time and worried for them, then they're doubting themselves in those moments. And then they grow up not ever really believing in themselves. And I used to let my 6-year-old run around with a machete to cut bananas. I mean, I really let him explore, but he's never had any major injuries. And we've done some pretty, he's been pretty extreme with his body. I mean, he got stitches once for trying to make a shield out of cardboard, and he was using the knife to cut through the cardboard, and it went into his hand. But all the sharp objects he's used over the years, and all the, just playing in big waves and just really pushing his limit, he's never had a bad injury because he learned how to use his body, I think. And I think that's key, and also just remembering that, it's hard because we hear other people's judgments all the time, and just being out there and having people give their opinion, or you can just feel the judgment, and just I just think it's so important we remind ourselves to listen to our own instincts and to trust that we know what's best for our kids. And I also wanted to share a book that that's been really helpful for me with reading, you guys. I love this book. It's called The Roadmap to Literacy. It's an excellent resource. It's huge, but you know, it really has helped me a ton. And I didn't use this method with my son, you know, and I'm using it more with my 8-year-old now and with my students, but it's been a great tool for me and very, very helpful. Oh, and another book I wanted to recommend that helped me. I don't typically like to read a lot of books, like for parenting, because I think sometimes then you start just following all these books and you don't listen to your instincts or intuition as much. But one book I really did love was How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen and Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. It's a great, great book, and it's really helped me a lot. And thanks, you guys. It's nice to know we're not alone.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that you came today. This really is just getting going, and it really feeds my soul as a parent, just kind of like dojo feeds your soul as a person. And it's been so beneficial for my son, really, if me doing this and learning from you guys. And I absolutely love to read for myself to gain all the information. So I really love the books, but I have learned so much from coming here and just hearing, you know, everyone's experience and stuff like that. And Mom, I want to say thank you so much for coming and talking with us today. And I believe, Lynette, you have your hand up, and then Amber, I don't know if you put yours back up or not, but we're going to have Lynette and then my mom, and we will close it out here for today, you guys.
I'll start by just saying thanks, Linda, for sitting with us today.
You're
And
welcome.
I want to say, to Mark, I think it's interesting that you brought up parenting and the homeschooling. And I think that's what's interesting about our approach of like this Aquarian way, right? There's kind of like, it's all meshed into one, right? Like that's kind of how my teaching is. It's not like school and education is one thing, the home education and life is another. It's like one thing. And I kind of think that's what's cool with like the Aquarian Way and where we're going with the homeschool. It's kind of like the blurred lines, right? Like we're learning continuously in life. And so I think it's cool if there's dojos that are like this, where it may seem like more parenting type stuff that we're going through, or if it's more on the academic side of things. I think that's very much representative of what I think the Aquarian Way is it's just life, right? It's that flow of parenting and educating and all of it. So good stuff.
Absolutely, 100%. And when you put it together, there really is no separate, because we're just living and learning and trying to go with the flow. I love it. Mom, do you want to say anything before we close out?
Unmute.
Mom, you got to unmute.
Sorry. Just wanted to end with something. And again, thank you for letting me join your group. It was fun. But it's an old quote that my mother used to say: forgiveness does not change the past, but it does change the future. So we just be holistic and one day at a time. One day at a time.
Love it. Thank you, Mom.
You're welcome.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Happy
everybody.
Friday.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
Linda. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks, Anna. Great stuff.